Right, well, Bastard was a band that started in the early 70s, about 1972, and we couldn't get gigs in this country because of the name. We do like free festivals, like with the Pink Fairies and all that, because they were mates and they'd help us out. But in the end, we moved to Brussels, and we gigged there. It was good. The French side of the Belgian people, they were really into rock and roll that we was into, like Iggy and the Stooges and the MC5, Lou Reed and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in England, they didn't care at all. They was just caught up in the kind of like plastic glam scene or Genesis kind of progressive stuff, which is just really, really boring. Anyway, we was over there and we was playing, and we made a bit of a reputation for ourselves, which kind of infamy, I guess. And in the end, people started falling to the wayside, getting married to French birds and all that sort of stuff. And I come back one Christmas to eat and see my parents, and I saw an ad in Melody Maker, because I used to advertise for bands in Melody Maker, and I used to advertise for musicians in Melody Maker. And it was for a couple of guys that were looking for a guitar player and a drummer. So I went over to see these guys, and one was called Mick and the other guy was called Tony, and they were working under a kind of like a rough name called London SS. And we auditioned, and they liked what I did, and so I got my gear over from Belgium. They were good enough to wait for me to get me amp and my guitar and stuff like that. And we were auditioning, I don't know, it seemed like ages, right, for a singer and a drummer. And in the end, this guy called Chris Miller come down. And he was one of the only people that actually knew what we were talking about. And he'd only heard like the odd track or two, maybe one Stooges or one MC5 or whatever. But anyway, he was great. He attacked his drums, he beat the fucking shit out of his drums, right? And I dug him. The other guys, they weren't too sure because he didn't look right to them. He didn't look rock and roll, but he was rock and roll. He was great. So we shot off and we started our own band, and we called it The Damned. And he met this guy called Dave through Malcolm McLaren, who's a Pistols manager. And he weren't particularly keen on Malcolm and the whole kind of setup, as much as we adored the Pistols, because they were like sort of kindred spirits. And he used to know this guy called Ray who cleaned toilets with him at the what's it called, the Fairfield Halls in Croydon. Anyway, this guy Dave that he'd met through McLaren was down in Asheville one week when the Pistols were playing. And I said, who's that guy then? And he said, that's the guy I was telling you about that McLaren put me together with. And so I was like, hey, let's talk to him, right? He looks good, it's kind of fun, right? Look like Dracula. And so we said to him, do you want to come down? We're getting a band together, getting our own band together, right? We're going to call it The Damned. And so I said, yeah. He said, I wasn't thinking about singing, but I'll come down and see. And we invited this other guy down, skinny guy with spiky hair called Sid, and he didn't show up. That was Sid Vicious. And so one thing led to the other. This guy Ray from the toilets at the hall, he come down. He never heard of the kind of music that I wanted to play, but he got into it. I said, look, you're a guitar player. I ain't looking for a guitar player, I'm looking for a bass player. Keeps it basic, right? And he said, yeah, I want to be part of this. I like the way you guys are talking. I like the music you're listening to. So that's how it all started. That's how The Damned started, you know. Yeah. Cheers to the memory. I wrote the first. I had some bits and bobs ideas and stuff like that. I was used to writing songs because I was writing songs in Bastard with a singer from Bastard. So I kind of had that down a bit. And so the other guys, they weren't used to writing songs at all, so it was down to me. I mean, we wanted to do original stuff. We did a Stooges thing, we did a New York Dolls thing to start off with, and an old Who thing called Circles. But we wanted to do our own stuff, form our own identity, and that's what we did. So I wrote the songs, and we recorded the first single, which was New Rose, which turned out to be the first English punk single. And yeah, the first album come out in, when was it, February of '77, and then when it come to the second album, I had no songs left. I think I had one song that we've been like gigging in a bit, and J. Car manager said, we want another song, we want another album. So we're like, fuck, who can write? Anyway, I did. Come on, guys, come on, get it together. Try and write, help. You know what I mean? Let's do it. So we wrote it. Between us, we actually come up with an album's worth of songs, but it was rushed. It weren't no good. We had a shit producer, and I don't know. There's a lot of good ideas on the second album. It was called Music for Pleasure, which is a piss take of this series of albums that used to come out like in the early '70s, '60s, which are like really kind of boring albums usually. Middle of the road albums. New Rose, it was a riff that I had kicking around for a long time, the main riff of it. And the drummer I used to play with in Boston, he never quite got the hang of it. He didn't do nothing with it. It was just like, it was flat. I played it to Rat and he set the damn thing on fire. It was great. It was all of a sudden we had something special going on. So then, I think it was within a couple of hours, I just wrote the rest of the song around it. The lyrics, the whole thing. Like the best songs that I think are written quick, bang. If you mulling over ideas and you're trying to do it, it sounds that way. It sounds boring. Yeah, so it's just one of them songs, and yeah. And I think it stands up today. It's a great song. Yeah. Well, what happened was Rat left mid '77 or whenever it was, something like that. Maybe September or something, and he was disillusioned and stuff like that, and without Rat it weren't the same damn, so I didn't leave. I split the band up. We did a farewell show at the Rainbow in I think it was April of '78, and then everybody started doing their own things. I wanted to do something different. I formed a band called Tans to Youth, and the punk scene had become very samey. It become like I went to a Clash gig. I remember going to a Clash gig when I first went to the States, which was in sort of this was Easter of '77. I come back, someone said, "Oh, the Clash are playing at the Rainbow," I think it was. Went down to the Rainbow, and the Clash were on stage playing, sounding good and all that sort of stuff, dressed up in their stuff. You look around the audience, everybody's dressed the same. They're all dressed up like a fucking Clash. It looked like a Bay City Rollers gig, but a rock and roll version. You know what I mean? It was like, whoa, this is shit. You know, the whole thing about the punk thing was to do your own thing. You know, these guys weren't. They were just copying. It was stupid. So what with Rat leaving and the whole thing, it was just like, right, let's stick the final night now in this old coffin and move on, you know. There's plenty of new musicians out there. And they decided to get back together again. I was doing Tans to Youth, and then I went off to play with Iggy for a while. Well, I met Steve Baders, when the Dam first went over to New York. We played CBGB's, a club that was going then. It was like the good kind of like punk club, if you like, where Blondie and the Heartbreakers and the Ramones, everybody played there. That's where it was a kind of like a growing place for New York bands, you know. We played down, we had Dead Boys, the band called the Dead Boys, playing with us. And we did like 3 nights doing 2 shows a night, both bands 2 shows a night. And we got to know these guys, you know, and particularly me and Steve, we got on great from the outset. And Cheetah, the guitar, but everybody got on good. We're all kind of like like-minded people. They come from Cleveland, we come from London. You know, it was just like we were born to play together at some point. Anyway, so me and Steve said, well, you know, at some point it'd be kind of cool to maybe try and do something at some point, you know. And the circumstances went this way and the other, and in, I think it was 1980, he phoned me up and he said, Brian, I've got this solo band. The Dead Boys are split up. I've done a solo album. I've got this solo band, and it'd be really cool. I mean, I was seeing him from time to time, like when I was with Iggy in New York and that. Steve would be there and everything. We'd be hanging out and drinking and stuff. And he said, do you want to come over? said, yeah, send me a ticket, man. I'll come over and play some guitar with you. So I did that, and it kind of cemented us. It cemented our kind of relationship, you know. And we started messing around with ideas and stuff. And then he came over to London to play with the guys from Tram 69 without Percy, the singer. And they did an album called The Wanderers, and they kind of set Steve up, and this was great because he was here waiting. Well, while he's doing that, me and him are getting together and writing songs for our projected thing later on, and that's what happened. We started messing around, hanging out, playing together and writing songs together, and we tried out various people like rhythm sections. We had Tony James and Terry Chimes at one point. We had Glenn Matlock, who was a mate because he was playing in the Pistols with me. He was playing in the Iggy Pop thing with me. All kinds of people were checking out. But finally we settled on this guy called Dave Dragana, who was from Sham on bass, and Nicky Turner, who was from a band called the Barracudas, who played a lot of toms, who was looking for someone who had a bit of jungle about him, you know. And he was the man. He was great, perfect, and that's how the Lords kicked off. Well, that came through our manager. The Lords was managed by a guy called Miles Copeland, and he had a record label called IRS, and IRS had a space on what was called like the Paramount lot, and the Paramount lot had like things like the Psycho House and Bates Motel and the Jaws thing, and they used to do rides and all this sort of stuff, right? And he had some kind of connection with Toby Hooper, who directed the first Chainsaw movie, and he filmed a new movie, Texas Chainsaw 2, and he was looking for music. And so Miles said, well, I've got this band called Lords of the New Church, right? And I think Toby had heard of us. And he was in cahoots with this other guy called Danny Houston as well. And at one point, they were going to do a video, which would have been cool. But what they did want was some songs, right? So we submitted 2 songs. We did Good to Be Bad and Mind Warp. And it got shown on the movie, which was they were played on the movie, which was good, real good, because the Texas Chainsaw, them movies are great, you know. But there's a whole kind of new conversation to be had there, how horror movies and rock and roll go together, you know. Yeah. Well, the Dripping Lips, it was never a real band. What it was, I was invited to do the music for a movie, a Belgian-French movie, being filmed in Brussels called Abracadabra. And so I did the music for it and stuff like that with the aid of a friend of mine who was living there, a guy called Robbie Kelman, a Scots guy. And he'd write the words and I'd write the music and stuff like that. And we worked very closely with Harry Cleveland, who was the director. And at one point in the movie, there's a band playing in this kind of like gig situation. It was a kind of like a little kind of like punk gangster movie. It was a cool movie, good people in it. Philippe Voltaire, a French actor, was in it and stuff. A very, very neat film. And Harry was good. Anyway, so we had to do this thing, and we thought, okay, well, who do we get in to play drums on that track that's going to be featured here and so forth? So we had to put a band together, basically. So we put a band together, and we did the whole kind of thing there, being filmed and stuff. And then we thought, well, this band sounds kind of good, you know, we were like messing around and stuff. And the drummer, he was a new San Francisco guy, and he played with like Jack Cassidy and all these different people over there, and he was kind of tough, good tough drummer. So he thought, well, let's do a few gigs. We did that, and then Robbie, in the meantime, he met Jimmy Miller, producer, who'd done like the Stones and Motorhead and a whole bunch of stuff, you know. I mean, a great producer, and. So we talked to Jimmy, and he said, well, I'd really like to produce you guys. You sound good and that. So there was a new studio opening up in Brussels, And it was an ideal thing. They were looking for a band to like test out the sound and everything like that. And so we said, look, okay, we'll do that. You don't charge us nothing for the studio, right? We'll be your what's it, and you can use our names, you know, like Jimmy's name, my name, and all that from the Damned, and we'll see what happens. And so we did an album, and it sounded good. And the studio actually was just like real cool. It was a good studio. It didn't cost us a penny. Well, Mouth for the Racket was a thing. I'd been living in France. I come back from France, and I got in touch with an old friend of mine, a guy called Ian Grant. We went way back to the like early 70s. He was a promoter. He put gigs on. He was a revolutionary. He was a cool guy. And I'd seen him off and on all through the years and stuff like that. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I don't know, Ian, you know, I want to get a band together, I guess. You know, I've got a whole bunch of songs I've been writing, living in France and stuff like that. And he said, well, look, I've got an idea. Let me throw this at you. Why don't you phone up some of your friends, different musicians, and do an album with different musicians and stuff, rather than trying to find a definite band and stuff. I said, okay, you know, so I phoned up like Stuart Copeland, Clem Burt, different drummers I admired. I found Lemmy, but Lemmy couldn't do it, but we said, well, okay, one day we're going to do it, and unfortunately we never did. Different people, and I found out Wayne Kramer from the MC5, who was playing, I really, really dug, and I've met him a few times in France whenever he come over, and I met him in New York when he got out of prison and stuff. And he said, look, this is all kind of like, I really want to work with you and stuff, but we've got to write the songs and then get the different musicians in. We can't just like hope something's going to come up in the studio, you know. So I went over to Los Angeles where he was living, and we wrote a whole bunch of songs, like an album's worth. We put down like sort of guitars and ideas and stuff like that. Then we called people in, and when it come to a bass player, I was like, you know what? This band called Guns N' Roses, they covered New Rose, and that's how come I was able to live in France. And their bass player is the main punk guy in the band, a guy called Duff. So I got Ian or somebody to get hold of Duff and said, look, Duff, you know, do you want to meet up? I'm going to be in Los Angeles next week, and do you want to meet up if you're around? And he got back saying, sure. So he met down Barney's Bean Roof for lunch. I said, look, I'm doing this thing with Wayne. We got Stuart, we got Clem, we got a few other people. I want a really good bass player for a couple of songs. And he just turned around and said, fuck, I ain't going to fucking play a couple of songs. I'm doing a whole album. Right, I said, okay, right, all right, let's see how it goes, right, see how it rolls. I knew he was a great bass player, but I didn't know how good he was. He was good, real good. And he put that kind of hard, tough rock thing to it, kind of hard rock thing. You know, he had that punk ethos, but he had another side of things. He was surprising, he was cool, right? So we did it with him on bass, and, you know, yeah. So then we did a few gigs. Duff couldn't do the gigs because he wanted to go back to college, because when he got involved with Guns N' Roses, he left all his kind of studies and he wanted to finish off. He's a married man now, he couldn't drink, he'd blown up his body through too much drink and all this. So he wanted to do that. It was something that needed doing. And so we said, all right, who else is around, you know? And Stone Roses, I'd really like a bass player at Stone Roses, and he was working with Primal Scream, a guy called Manny. So we got in touch with Manny and said, look, do you want to come out and do some gigs with us? We've just done this album, the bass player can't do it, Duffy can't do it, do you want to come and play bass? And he said, yeah, I'd love to. And this Manchester chap turned up, and an adorable guy and a great bass player, and it was a big party playing with these guys. It was real cool, you know. So it wasn't so much a solo album. it was a real community effort, one way and another. You know, like me and Wayne wrote the song, sure, but like everybody put their bit in, and everybody was great on it. You know, I found it easier to have my own band going after working with various musicians and trying to kind of compromise and stuff like that. So what I've been doing for the last 10 years or so is doing my own thing. I'm very fortunate in the fact that I've got a good friend I live in Brighton, and I've got a really good friend in Brighton, a guy called Austin, who's got his own studio, so we can record and put things together. And we had various people, like kind of different dramas and all this sort of stuff, doing mostly rock and roll stuff. Like, you know, I just keep writing. You know, I'm writing songs, and I'm trying to write a book, a bleeding book it's called. I did an acoustic album with my old friend Mark from the Lords, who's a pianist who played with the Lords in the New Church, to get it off my chest. And he brought loads of different things to the table. I didn't think he would. We were playing kind of bluesy stuff and that, and all of a sudden he's like, well, I picked up this accordion in New Orleans. Just wanted to try that on. And it's like, wow, let's put it on everything. You know, when it comes to the mix, we can either keep it or chuck it, you know, whatever, you know. And we did that, and the album come out far better than, well, it was just, it kind of, it stands up great. Check it out. It's called, we called ourselves Brian James Grand Cru. And the album's called Chateau Brian. There's a French old wine called Chateau Brigon, and it's a kind of piss take on that because I drink a lot of wine. And that's what that was. And then I thought, right, I've indulged my record company enough, and I'm going to do what they really want me to do and do a rock and roll album, right? First of all, I'd done like, I retraced my footsteps in the Damned, and I did like a single of New Rose on an anniversary. I think it was the 30th anniversary or something like that. Re-recorded it with the Brian James Gang, and it sounded good. And I'd done the odd track here as kind of bonus tracks for like Japanese releases or whatever. And my manager said, look, finish the job there, do that, and do whatever else you want then, but do like an album of retracing old Damn stuff, you know. You wrote it, you got carte blanche, you can do what you want with the damn things. So that's what I did. There's a bit of accordion again on Feel the Pain, and I've got a girl singing on there who's very, very haunting, I think. It's mostly rock and roll, of course, because they're rock and roll songs, but I tried to sort of like mess them around a little bit. I wrote a second verse for Sick of Being Sick, and just little things like that. But then my last album is a thing called The Guitar That Dripped Blood, and I wanted to bring things up to date, rock and roll wise. Now some people say this should have been the second Damned album. There's other people who say the guy in France who writes for Rolling Stone, he was like, this should have been the third Lords album. You know, it's all this kind of stuff. People are digging it, which is cool, because I put a lot of work on it. I played a lot of guitars, and I dig it. And I hope anybody that listens to it digs it too, you know. Who knows? It's from the heart. This is my friend Graham Humphreys, wonderful artist. Graham and I go back to the early days of the Lords. He did the first Lords album, he did the second Lords album, and since then he's just about done nearly everything I've done. And culminating, like last year, was it last year? Or
I think it was.
Yeah, in an album called The Guitar That Dripped Blood, which was like my last rock and roll album. And Graham does a lot of horror movie covers and posters and stuff like that. The guy's a genius, man. And
you're too generous, Brian.
No, I know I am, but it's a fact, though.
At least you know that you're generous. No, it's a joy to be working with you, because I know that from the beginning of The Damned through Lures, all the horror imagery. It's been fantastic, and even just working on covers, posters for other people, other clients. When I work, I like to have music to inspire me, and The Damned, Lord's New Church, what fantastic, rich sounds those bands have produced, and that's you. And the thing is that music really shapes the textures, the colours, and the imagery as well, though. So for me, working on any job, having that music in the background really kind of generates the imagery. Absolutely. Though. So I mean, seeing images of The Damned in their very early days, just understanding Dave Vanian's kind of vampiric attitude, and just looking at the poses, the t-shirts, and just the general attitude. The look of horror was already there. I mean, I, as a sort of 16-year-old, terrified of everything. Fighting the little puppy that I was, though, it was the most frightening image I've ever seen. The damned album cover petrified me. I used to avert my eyes virtually walking past a record store, but then to find out you're actually a very nice person, really, though. And I was subsequently meeting, of course, Dave and Captain, lovely gentleman. And it's interesting to find that then absolutely, but finding we have mutual interest in certain things. So, like, Dave obviously loves his horror films. You obviously have your tradition of horror film inspirations as well, though. So for me, I have to thank you for so many things, though, because your music has really pushed and kicked me so hard in the best possible way, though.
Well, I think that's the great thing, isn't it? When you've got the two genres meeting and inspiring each other, I mean, I love horror movies, always have done since I was a kid, and
you're still a kid,
why are we kids? Because of
horror and punk.
Absolutely, rock and roll and
bit of red wine as well, that helps.
A little red wine, a little medicine.
Water bullshit
helps.
It does.
Everything.
But no, what fantastic, to get to after all this incredible lineage, though, from working with the Lords. 1980...
82?
Yeah, I think so.
It was. Yeah.
About the time I was working...
35 years ago, man.
Blimey. 35 halcyon years, though. But to think that still now, the house with the guitar, or Drip Blood, obviously, from the house that Drip Blood played. I mean, that was your inspiration for the title.
Absolutely.
Have you seen the film recently, then? House that Drip Blood?
I saw it about a year ago, I guess. I've got it on DVD.
Recently, then. That's more recent than I saw it, mate.
I mean, I've seen it many times, of course.
Was that in the coffin-shaped box?
Yes, it was. Amicus. The Amicus movies. No, it's a fun one. Yeah. But there's so many great movies. We was talking about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and stuff like that, because the Lords did, as you know, a couple of tracks for the follow-up and have you ever done the artwork for that ever in your, because you did a lot of re-releases and stuff, didn't you?
Funny enough, it's not one that I've done. I think it will happen.
It's bound to.
It's of the
You've done just about every other horror.
Well, I found myself reimagining artworks for a lot of films that I would love to have worked for at the time.
Yeah.
But as a sort of young jobbing person, these jobs just don't come to you. So the market in reissuing classic films, being remastered, and having a chance to create something new for those, is fantastic. And it's interesting that the license, imagery-wise, for Texas Massacre is one of the most expensive licenses you can actually buy. I have a friend who's doing a documentary about horror films, and they were saying that it was actually a block to creating the final cut, because actually trying to get footage from Texas Massacre using artwork from it, though, was so expensive that actually stop the project though.
Yeah.
And yet, you imagine that Texas Chainsaw Massacre is much like the early punk rock was a very raw, cheaply put together.
Yeah, that was part of the appeal.
Angry little film though.
Yeah, that was very cool.
If you look at it today, the footage, you know that actually just costs nothing. And somehow it's become one of the most expensive films to reference.
Yeah.
And do you find that your back catalogue is very expensive, Brian? Are you expensive?
Nah, I've always been pretty cheap, you know.
Good.
Yeah, I'm proud of it.
Good.
Apart from when it comes to the wine. I like a decent glass of wine. Exactly. I ain't cheap there.
Absolutely.
It was funny because when the Lords had done like that, I think it was just after their first cover, Graham had done such a fantastic job on it. I mean, the guy, I've got to say this, Graham, but he's got such a personality in his artwork. There was a movie that came out of the movies called The Evil Dead, and I see the poster for it, and I thought, Graham, it's Graham. He's done a movie. He's transferred right from the music business to the movie business, doing stuff, and it was straight away that kind of like, I don't know, surreal
the
kind of
poster
thing.
was my punk rock movie poster.
It must have been your
completely
It was just
imbued with everything I loved in music. And so when I was painting that poster, I was listening to the Crowds, Sex Pistols, The Gun Club, Damned, Iggy Pop, and all of that is in there though. For me, when I still have the original artwork, when I see it, I just know all the music I was listening to as I was painting each and every mark.
Cool,
there, though. And more so than the film itself. Though. The film I enjoyed, of course, but for me, when I create an image, it's all about everything else that's around the movie, not the film itself, but the cultural stuff, the noise and the music. And I can look at any piece of work I've done over the years and know what I was listening to at the time, though, because it really does shape everything, though. But I know that
because you've got such a style.
Whenever I use, for instance, a particular type of purple, it's always Lords of the New Church. It's insane, isn't it, though? If it's a type of green, I know that's the Cramps I'm listening to. If it's a particular type of orange, it's the Gun Club. Certain types of blues, it's always going to be the Banshees. It's just quite odd how that happens, though, but it does. That's the reality of it.
Yeah.
So horror and punk. Happy people, though. Happy. Brian, what's interesting is the Damned as probably the first kind of official punk band, although I know the term hadn't been created at the time you created your band. It's interesting to see how punk took on horror imagery and the two came together, and to see then other bands kind of running with that banner in many ways there. I mean, we talked about, it's been mentioned about how Texas Chainsaw Massacre came out about that time, and huge interest in horror for a lot of punks who were interested in transgressive imagery and things which were kind of, threatening to society, I guess, or considered a threat to society. And of course, the Damned, having taken a name from a fantastic little bunch of horror films, there was one other band, of course, Susan and Banshees, and their name coming from Cry of the Banshee. Fantastic Vincent Price film, not his best, not one of the best of that period, but my God, what a great name. And I do remember reading an interview with I think perhaps it was either Steve or Susie, saying that they'd seen the film late night TV. I thought, what a great name for a band, the Banshees, and hence something magical was born. And it's curious to know that the Damned and the Banshees probably kind of kick-started. Why not?
Thank you,
the Damned and the Banshees, the love of the horror imagery, the relationship to horror films, kind of spawned what we now refer to as Gothic, the goth scene, Gothic music.
But it's come from all directions, though, hasn't it? I way back, like when Hitchcock did Psycho with Bernard Herrmann's score and stuff like that, you had the imagery and the music to go with it. Okay, it wasn't rock and roll, but it was attack, and it could well have been rock and roll. It's violins instead of guitars. That's all, right? And it's been going on. I've said this before, but you take someone like Dario Argento, and his use of Goblin, the band, and all that sort of stuff. Is using the two things together and creating something which is unsettling and complementary, and in many cases absolutely beautiful.
What's interesting, of course, Claudio Simonetti was from Goblin. Is a frustrated musician.
You find it with a lot of actors, don't you? Yeah.
But it's great because he just wanted to do kind of heavy metal, prog rock stuff, and Argento was himself a big fan of those genres.
I think
it's almost a shame.
Did he have a gig, Dario Argento?
Himself?
Yeah, did he have? He ran a gig, or had people run a gig for him, putting on bands. Because I remember when the Reformed Lords played somewhere in Italy, someone saying to me, "Do you know who owns this place? Dario Argento." Yeah.
Fantastic. So did you meet him?
No, I didn't. No. Otherwise I'd know for sure. It was only what some of these guys said, but it's like, well, okay, yeah. But it was all done in very kind of like gothic-y kind of things. But there was no like Dario Argento posters or anything like that, or anything I could put my finger on.
So I have to ask though, Brian, because the Lord's New Church were labelled as part of the Gothic scene for a lot of people. Now I know that there were a few gigs I saw you perform at where there were perhaps people like banging sex fiends, people who and sex game children, had completely identified as Gothic and nothing else. Though they came from that one little kernel of music. How did you feel about performing on bills with them? Did you ever find yourself thinking music. You were Gothic?
No, but I don't like to sort of pigeonhole music at all. I think it's crazy, To me it's all rock and roll in one form or another, But the Damned went through, after my time with the Damned, they went through their kind of like very gothic stage, didn't they, and stuff like that. But they were still Damned, they still play rock and roll too.
Still on, right? I think.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's all part and parcel. It's like different kind of tangents off the same old, you know what I mean? It's still the same kind of deal, really.
Damned, same music.
Well, yeah, kind of, it's all tangents and stuff, like you find a theme, like in the horror movies, a lot of similar themes, sort of people get lost in the woods or they end up in some place, be it a house or wherever, and things start happening, kind of weird and wonderful things start happening, some kind of scary, maybe some just fantasies going on, and you have that with the music as well.
Well, given that I think most horror is fantasy anyway, for yourself.
I think most music's fantasy too.
But it's tangible though. It hurts your ears and stuff. It makes your ears bleed.
Well, you get too close to the speakers.
But do you find you're inspired by horror films now? I mean, is there horror you watch now? I mean, do you revisit horror films perhaps?
I just bought two.
Well, I know they're
in the bag, but I don't know where they're going to be like. I keep finding things.
What, randomly, or were you seeking them out?
No. Just looking around HMV, and they're just new releases of old films.
Fantastic.
You probably know them.
But I've never seen them. Who knows?
Okay. But no, I love horror movies, old horror movies, even the most trashy old things, I find it fun,
Well, for me, it just
today, there ain't a lot of music about coming out, and to tell you the truth, there ain't a lot of movies coming out. It's all kind of special effects, and it's too...
CGI'd movies, CGI'd music.
It is. It's becoming so synthetic, the whole kind of deal.
Like visceral, the real raw stuff.
Give me a good old kind of like Bela Lugosi movie or a good old Frank Sinatra song.